Started. All right, we're going to get started. Folks, I apologize for the late start of this meeting. We had council went very late, and then there were meetings, other committee meetings immediately that were delayed. And so some of us had to come from those and tried to leave early, but we needed quorum in those hearings as well. So we got out as fast as we could out of those meetings. So we are starting this meeting late, and I apologize for that. But let's get going. So good afternoon. Welcome to the meeting of the Budget and Finance and Innovation Committee. Mr. Verano, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Blumenfield present.
Councilmember Harris-Dawson, absent. Councilmember McOsker.
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Yaroslavsky, absent. 3 members and a quorum, Mr. Chair.
All right. So for colleagues and members of the public, my intention is to hold items for discussion 1, 4, 17, 29, 37, 45, 47, 48, 49, 50, and 57, and specifically then to approve the remaining items on consent, unless, of course, any member would like to call them special. And specifically, I'm suggesting for consent item 2, items 5 through 16, items 18 through 28, items 30 through 36, items 38 through 44, item 46, and item 51 through 56. Okay, and I understand that the CEO has an amendment to item 3, the construction projects report. Why don't we start, just read that one into the record as well?
Yes, sir, I can read that. I can read that item into the record. Item number 3, we'd like to make the following amendment. Instruct the city clerk to place on the agenda of the first regular council meeting on July 1st, 2024, or shortly thereafter, the following instructions. Recommend for council action subject to approval of the mayor to authorize the controller to transfer $200,000 as follows from Fund 59V/50 Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation SB1 Fund, account number 50YZBG First Street Bridge over Figueroa Street for $200,000, to Fund 100/40 General Services Department, account number 001014 Salaries Construction Projects for $15,000, and account number 003180 Construction Materials for the remaining $185,000. Thank you.
Okay. Then let's move on to public comment. If you could explain the rules for public comment to folks. Yeah, or we can just go into public comment. I'll do it then. So folks will have 1 minute for each item, up to 2 minutes total, and then you'll have an additional minute for general public comment of items that are within the jurisdiction of the Budget Committee. So with that, anything else we need to say before we move to public comment? Okay. Then I'm going to read names, and if you hear your name called, if you could come to what's the left side of the room for you, house left, stage right. See the sergeant there, and you'll go to the podium. I'll read a bunch of names. Please don't come up till your name is called, but you don't have to speak in the order of which I call you. So once your name is called, you just get online and we'll go from there. So I'm going to read the names. We have Latoya Jones, Adam Burke, Alicia Rivers, Cassie Horton, Eddie Alvarez, John Coley, and I will stop there.
Good afternoon. Adam Burke, appearing for Los Angeles Tourism and Convention Board, both general public comment and item number 1, appearing on behalf of the 1,100 local businesses who depend on travel and tourism for their livelihoods. I think it's incredibly important to frame today's discussion in saying it is so much more than simply the 2028 Olympic Games. Conventions really remain one of the biggest unseen drivers of our local economy. In 2019 alone, citywide conventions generated over $8 billion of local revenues for our business community. I think it's also important to recognize that this is not a downtown issue, because we have quite literally hundreds of businesses and thousands of Angelenos in every council district who rely on citywide conventions for their livelihoods. The reality is we're already losing business. Over the last 5 years, we have quite literally dozens of citywide conventions that have booked LA based on the good faith promise that we would expand and modernize the center. Right now, there is $240 million of business at risk, and we already have had that business walk out the door. Beyond that, without the expansion progressing, that loss will become permanent. There's obviously been a lot of focus on the need to reinvigorate our local economy. Modernizing the center is quite simply the single biggest demand driver that we can implement, with a projected $6 billion of incremental revenues to our business community over the next 10 years. And that's not loose math. That is based on 4 decades of booking the convention center. I can also tell you that we have major hotel developers who will not move forward with their projects until the expansion is moving forward, because without that demand, they cannot support the additional rooms inventory. The bottom line is right now our credibility is at stake. We've promised planners for 10 years that we're going to get this done. And right now, I don't think we're going to get a third bite at the apple. So I implore council to please support the expansion and to move forward as expeditiously as possible. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Alicia Rivers, and I am here on behalf of BizFed, the LA County Business Federation. We are an alliance of over 240 business organizations who represent over 410,000 employers with 5 million employees in LA County. And I'm here to comment on item 1. Our tourism and hospitality industries are vital to our local economy, and we support efforts that bring needed revitalization projects to our region. This expansion project will give a competitive edge to LA over other top-tier cities like Dallas and Las Vegas. This, in turn, will support our local restaurants, hotels, attractions, and other areas that LA has to offer. While this is not a 2028 Olympics project, the City Council must act now if it wants a new convention center by the time we are once again on the world stage. And it's important to know that even though we are #1 in sports, media, and entertainment, our convention center is ranked 21, right next to Kansas City. Thank you.
Eddie Alvarez, LAOC Building Trades. Item number 1 in general comment. Also a longtime resident of CD7 and now a resident of CD14. I speak today on behalf of the 150,000 construction workers who are going to be building this project and who have built the projects throughout the city our whole entire lives. But not just for them, but for all the folks that are going to be working inside. We have what I think an opportunity here for jobs, not just with us, but with others, with the service industry and the hotel workers. But we have enough people to build this. Something came out a couple weeks ago, there's a worker shortage. There is no such thing as a worker shortage in the union construction. We have people at the hall ready to do this job. IBEW had to close their apprenticeship within 2 days because we had so many people apply to become electricians. And the operators, 10,000 people 2 weeks ago applied to be operating engineers. We have enough people to build this and get this done on time. And we think we can get this done way before any Olympics. This isn't an Olympic project, this is a city project. We need to get this done for the city. And we're ready to build it on time, build it under budget to make one of the best convention centers in America. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. State your name and which item you'd like to speak on.
I'm sorry about that. Well, my name is Latoya Jones. Nice to see everyone here. I love Father, Mother. A lot of money has been going a lot of places. And
Which items are you speaking on?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, which items do you want to speak on?
I guess where the tax money is going, because a lot of it is mine. So.
Okay. So general public, so you have 1 minute, go ahead.
Okay, they've taken a lot, but they're not putting it where it needs to be. Per se, it's a lot more homeless people out here today, and also veterans. They've served their life for this country, and they shouldn't have to suffer. And the state hasn't done enough for these people here. Father, Mother. So what can we do to try to change that? Because it's time. I've been in the field, I've been homeless for about 15 years of my life, And I can concur and relate to these people out here on the street. Father, mother. Could we reevaluate some things and make sure some of this good pot money goes to who it really needs to go to? It is a lot of streets that do need to be constructed. I can concur with that. Okay, time.
Thank you very much. Okay, next speaker. I'm going to read some additional names as well, so folks can line up. We had John Coley, Cara Bartlett, Mark Davis, Nell McCosker, Nolan Marshall, Rich Sarian, and we'll stop there.
Hello, I am speaking on item 1 and also general comment. My name is Cassie Horton, and I am both a downtown LA resident and one of the co-founders of the Downtown LA Residents Association, and I'm speaking to the importance of the convention center for folks who live downtown. I really urge you to approve this project and move forward. There are 90,000 of us who are residents right now in downtown Los Angeles. That's more than the city of Santa Monica. The Convention Center project has an opportunity to be a catalyst for the quality of life for downtown residents at a time where we are still facing major post-pandemic challenges, including homelessness, folks not returning to the office, businesses closing. Residents downtown are extremely concerned about our diminishing quality of life, and we're asking you to think about us, think about our community as you consider this vote. The long-term investment in the convention center will bring tourists, visitors, continued economic growth for our neighborhood. That means more jobs, more small businesses succeeding and thriving, and it also means safer streets for folks who live downtown as we have more visitors, more eyes on the street, more folks visiting our community and enjoying many of the amenities that we hope the convention center will bring. This is an important opportunity for the City Council to support not only region-wide success and tax revenue and to bring something home for your own constituents, but also to say to downtown residents that you care about us, our well-being, and the long-term economic viability of our neighborhood. So I urge you to vote yes and appreciate your time and consideration today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Item number 1 and general comment. My name is John Coley. I am the business representative for local union 831 trade show installers here in Southern California. We have been working in this area since we organized in 1911. And I want to touch on what Adam said earlier. It's not just about the Olympics and everything else. Our estimates with the increased square footage that you guys are proposing on this, we will be able to add within the first 2 years of bookings between 750 and 900 jobs. And I'm not talking just a job here and there, we're talking careers. The average length of time of our member in service right now is 18 years. When they come to us, they stay. They stay because they get a good retirement. They get good health care coverage. One member working can provide for their spouse and all of their dependents for the same amount with no additional cost. It is good work that a lot of the public doesn't know about. Currently right now, 2,000 plus people in Southern California performing this work, all well paid, living a very good life. So Olympics is great, union jobs, absolutely, but there's more on the line once this project is considered. Thank you for your consideration.
Good afternoon. My name's Robert Smith. I'm the political director for the Painters and Allied Trades, and one of the unions that are allied is the trade show folks. Can you guys stand up? We're very diverse, and these are just the folks that work there, besides the folks that will perform work building these projects, which is great, which we fully support. For me, and I look at this is good. The city needs us, we know we need to do this. But the issue that I have is, the private equity. We've heard one lady say the hotel industries, this industry, that industry. Where are they? Because this is a lot of money, and we think that private equity needs to step up and partner with the city, because they will be the people that will benefit from this. And A, and B, you know, we love the jobs. I mean, we've got the finest workforce in America. If you talk to the trade show industry, these are the cream of the crop folks, and you know, they all deserve to continue work and to expand and grow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Hi, Kara Bartelt. I'm here for item 1 and general public comment.
Okay. 1 minute for each.
My name is Kara Bartelt. I grew up in the Midwest, and my first brush with Hollywood was seeing the Field of Dreams movie transform Dryersville, Iowa, from nothing into something. We all know the phrase, if you build it, they will come. So I moved to LA over 20 years ago as an architect, and I was building retail, residential, commercial projects all over the city. And I knew that if you would build it, they did come. We saw it every day. Well, fate has brought me now. I'm the general manager of the Hoxton Hotel in downtown LA, where neighborhood is the core of our business. We're located just a few blocks away from the convention center, just down 11th Street. Conventions are vital to our hotel, where we employ over 200 Angelinos, and the convention activities account for a significant portion of our business. I sit on the board for the Fashion District and for LA Tourism, and I've seen over the last couple of years that we are losing business. We have too many hotel rooms for the number of the people that are now coming to our city. Just last month, we had to reduce our hours and service at our restaurant and bar, as we don't have the guests we did at even in 2021. The expansion of our convention center is vital. And LA is a world-class city. It deserves the best facilities to host and draw visitors. We must compete with the other cities, as we risk losing a key draw for our entire region. We cannot continue to go backward, because this is the city of dreams. And if we build this, they will come. If we build this, we will thrive. Thank you for consideration.
Good afternoon. Here to speak on item number 1 in general public comment. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Davis. I represent the Hilton Universal in CD4 and over 400 hotels as chair of the Hotel Association of Los Angeles. I'm here to express our support for the Convention Center project. The Convention Center serves an economic hub and a catalyst for tourism in Los Angeles, an industry that many individuals in this room depend on. Something important to remember, attendees of conferences and conventions typically stay longer, spend more. Leisure travelers often arriving a few days earlier and staying later. They spend money in Venice Beach, Hollywood Park, Universal Studios, vital to the economy. The best money that comes into the city comes from outside. These extended stays help full traditionally slow periods for hotels to smooth out their year in seasonal fluctuations. We are the second largest city in the country. We have the #1 port in the Western Hemisphere and one of the top airports in the country and the world. But unfortunately, our convention center doesn't live up to the bright lights of Los Angeles. As a world-class city with world-class destinations, it's only fitting that we have a modern and competitive convention center. Our group is also in city planning on an expansion of 400 rooms, vital to the area that we reside in, and new jobs, construction jobs, over 1,000 construction jobs, and 200, 300 permanent jobs. So I urge your approval this afternoon to invest in this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. Item 1 in general public comment. My name is Nella McCosker. I represent Central City Association, and today is exciting and important because we stand together, business, labor, and the civic community, in strong support of this item as one of the most important investments in the future of our city. I have to take every opportunity to thank the CLA and CAO's office for their tremendous work in the past few months. And we agree with your assessment of this project as one that is desirable, practical, and compatible with the city's interests. We know that this is a challenging decision. There are too few projects, and I know I speak to this committee who knows better than most. There are too few projects that come before you that can generate the amount of jobs and positive economic impact that this one can. We're talking tens of thousands of jobs, hundreds of millions of dollars in visitor spending and additional tax revenue for the city. The amendments that came out of T3 committee last week address and mitigate some of the very real concerns about cost and project completion. And you've already heard from labor partners who stand ready to complete this project in time for the 2028 Olympics, by some even faster. Doing anything less, though, before those big games would be a missed opportunity. And so on behalf of the hundreds of workers who will benefit, the small business owners who will be able to keep their doors open, and the visitors who can see the very best of Los Angeles when they come to visit this space, we urge you to approve this item. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll read some more names as the next speaker comes up. Rob Nothoff, Suzanne Hawley, Tommy Fave, Bond, Christy Hayek, Isabella Rojas, Rob Lovelace, Steve Choi.
Greetings, council members of the committee. On item 1 and general public comment, I'm Rich Sarian, lifelong and third generation Angelino, Valley boy, born and raised. I work with the South Park Business Improvement District, the bid which includes the convention center. The item before you today is to execute the early works agreement and finalize logistic of pre-development work to decide on the ability to expand and modernize the convention center. I cannot thank the CAO and CLA enough for their report on this and work to enter the next phase of this project. I am confident that it will be decided in the next phase that you're deciding on today that the convention center's expansion can and will be completed by the end of 2027, ahead of schedule and under budget. Just last year, we rebuilt the 10 freeway overnight. The Empire State Building was built in 390 days in 1930. It's 2024, and it has been said already, significant advances as well as in the labor force have been made in construction since. You can 3D print a home. I am sure the standard construction project in this world-class city will be completed in 3 years. The investment in this convention center is critical. This is a generational opportunity and will positively impact the city's income for a lifetime. Modernizing and expanding the convention center will enhance our global image as the world turns its eyes to Los Angeles for the 28 Olympics and everyone who wants to come to LA afterward. Let's capture those tourism dollars and all that are coming. If we don't invest in our city of Los Angeles to modernize and expand our convention center, why would anyone else invest in our city of Los Angeles? Please make the critical investment in our city to expand and modernize our convention center. Thank you.
Folks, and just remind folks that you've got 1 minute on the item, and then if you do general public comment, it has to be on something that's not on the agenda. So it can't just be 2 minutes on the item. Go ahead, sir. Which items would you like to speak to?
Item 1.
Okay, go ahead. You have 1 minute.
Nolan Marshall, the Executive Director of the South Park Business Improvement District. I don't want to be redundant here before you, and instead I'd rather use my time to emphasize a point that Adam Burke made from LA Tourism. This is the 4th downtown that I've had the privilege of doing this work in, and trust me, all downtowns across North America are approaching this cliff. You walk around downtowns and you see vacant ground floor spaces. What you don't see is the number of leases that are coming up due. You know about vacant office spaces. What you don't see is the number of leases that are up for renewal soon. All downtowns are approaching a cliff. Not all downtowns have the ability to attract the private investment back through a public investment like this one. But for this investment, no developer is going to take on the Oceanwide project, and you will own it one day if the private sector does not come in. No investor is going to invest in our ground floors but for this project. And so I would encourage you to move this item forward.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time today. I'm here to comment on item number 1. My name is Christy. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Los Angeles Business Council. In support of expanding and modernizing the convention center, LABC represents 500-plus businesses in Los Angeles whose focus is on innovating public policy and strengthening economic development in the city. Los Angeles has fallen behind other major cities when it comes to attracting conferences and events. Given how heavily we rely on the tourism industry, this planned expansion would bring in additional revenue and jobs that we so desperately need in this city, as well as prepare us for the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games. The potential return on investment makes this more than worthwhile, given that it will allow for $15 billion in economic output, and as we continue to look for ways to revitalize downtown Los Angeles, we cannot afford to pass up this opportunity. We urge the committee to schedule this for approval. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Rob Notoff. I'm here to speak on item number 1 in general public comment. Good afternoon, Chair Blumenfield, members of the committee. Rob Notoff with the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, where we proudly represent over 800,000 working women and men across all industries here in Los Angeles County, and we're here to speak in strong support of item number 1. And look, from our perspective, this is a no-brainer, and we should pursue this, any and all pathways to get this done today. The convention center expansion will result in thousands of good union construction jobs that open up career pathways out of poverty for local residents via a skilled and trained workforce and apprenticeship readiness programs, as my brothers Eddie Alvarez and Bob Smith and John Coley already mentioned. The convention center expansion will lead to hundreds of new permanent union jobs for workers at the convention center and additional job placement opportunities at trade shows and conventions for folks in like the audiovisual capacity. And the convention center expansion would modernize our city for the LA 28 Olympics and beyond, generating additional revenues and sales tax for the general fund that can be used to invest and further grow additional opportunities and job placement for other local residents. So again, as we see it, this is a no-brainer. It leads to a virtuous cycle, but we must act today if we want to get this done, so we strongly urge you to vote yes. Thank you.
Okay. You have a minute for general public comment? Okay. Again, folks, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, good afternoon, Budget Committee. My name is Tommy Falvaya. I represent IBEW Electrical Workers, Local Union 11. And we're also here in support of the item number 1. Obviously, with the prior speakers that spoke on the construction jobs, it's going to create a lot of construction jobs. And then also, after the construction is done, there's going to be a lot of convention call jobs. Our electricians, they work side by side with the other union that was mentioned, the painters and LA Trades, and a lot of these shows that come to the convention center. We've been there for a long time. IBEW plays a big part in the convention center, and we like to keep that momentum going when it comes to creating more work for our members. We represent close to 12,000 members here in LA County, and we urge your support on this item. Thank you. No general comment.
All right. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm here to comment on item number 1. My name is Steve Cho, the general manager and for the newly opened Moxie AC Hotel downtown Los Angeles. I'm also representing Lightstone, the developers of the project. Strongly urging City Council to please support the modernization and expansion of the convention center. On top of the comments already made today by my colleagues to support the convention center, we have developers like Lightstone that have invested over $600 million in this new project, in the new hotel, and on the promise that the convention center would be expanded by the time the hotel opened, which has been about a year and a half now. We urge you because developers like Lightstone are waiting on the decision for the expansion center to be expanded to look at future investments in Los Angeles, including other hotels, and that would really severely potentially stop future development if the convention center expansion did not go through. So it'll hurt future development, and I know developers are waiting on the sidelines to understand the decision made on this. So we strongly urge City Council to support the city convention center expansion. Thank you.
Thank you. As the next speaker comes up, I've read all the names on the list, so if for some reason you haven't heard your name and you signed up or wish to speak, you can go ahead and line up right now. So we'll take all the remaining speakers. Go ahead, ma'am.
I'd like to speak on item 1. Good afternoon. My name is Isabella Rojas, and I'm a public policy manager at the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Chamber, I'm speaking to express our unwavering support for the P3 agreement with AEG, which would expand and modernize the LA Convention Center. The Convention Center could be the beacon for tourism, resulting in economic benefit to the city. LA is the second largest city in the country. The Convention Center currently ranks number 21 in the nation. In today's competitive environment, we must make the investments to drive long-term success. It is estimated a modernized center will generate $69 million to the city's general fund annually, vital to funding much-needed services and supporting over 500,000 jobs. The LA Area Chamber would also like to thank the city for the recommendation to expand after decades of work together, as well for implementing the processes to get this project passed as soon as possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Blumenfield, members of the committee. My name is Rob Lovelace. I'm a representative of the Western States Regional Council of Carpenters. The agenda is long today, and I'm mindful of the fact that the brain can only absorb what the backside can endure, so I'll get straight to the point. There's been a lot of talk about construction. We're the ones who built the 10 freeway back in record time, and we're happy to lend our support and manpower to construct what is an important part of what we need in terms of infrastructure for the Olympics. Projects such as the LA Convention Center expansion, when built with proper labor standards appropriate to the community, are projects that help young people join the middle class. We urge your expeditious approval of the Convention Center expansion. Thank you.
Hi, I'm here to speak on item number 1. I'm Suzanne Hawley. I'm President and CEO of the DTLA Alliance. We represent the Downtown Center Business Improvement District in downtown Los Angeles. I'm here to support moving forward with the Convention Center. So you've heard from a lot of people, this is a good project. This is good for labor, this is good for business all throughout Los Angeles. We are a world-class city with a second-tier convention center. This is not really a matter of if we do it, it's when we do it. And for this committee, it's a matter of money too, and I understand that. And I ask that this committee not only consider price, but consider cost. What is the cost of not doing this now? Construction costs are not going to get any cheaper. There are the opportunity costs from losing conventions to other cities. There are cities across the nation that are improving their facilities by leaps and bounds. We are being left further and further behind. I strongly urge the committee to move forward with this project and move forward quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. So everyone who wishes to speak has spoken. If anybody has not, they can come up forward, but I don't see anyone, so we will close public comment. And then I'd like to move to the consent items. And colleagues, I misspoke slightly. I had listed item 52 as consent, and that is actually one that we're going to take up. So what I'd like to do is to take the following items on consent, as I indicated earlier. Item number 2, items 5 through 16, items 18 through 28, items 30 through 36, 38 through 44, item 46, item 51, and items 53 through 56. And this and also take up item 3 as amended. So seeing no objections, let's call the roll on all of those consent items, including item 3 as amended.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Councilmember Harris Dawson, absent. Councilmember McOsker.
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Aye.
Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Yes.
4 ayes, and these items are approved with number 3 as amended.
All right. So then let's move to, why don't we start with that small little item, Convention Center that folks have talked about. We've heard from a lot of speakers, and I think all of us here share the desire to see a new convention center. But as the last speaker mentioned, the question is, of course, cost, at what cost, and how it's all, what are the opportunity costs, what are the costs to the city, and the opportunity costs to the city. So why don't we bring up CAO for discussion?
Good
Welcome.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. So tell us a little bit about this convention center proposal.
Are you ready, sir?
Yes.
Sharon So, CLA.
Matt Szabo, CAO.
So the item before you is a joint CAO-CLA report on the LA Convention Center expansion project. We do have slides, but in the interest of time, we will go through these quickly to allow for questions. So as you may recall, by way of background, in December, your CAO and CLA presented a report which laid out options for the Convention Center expansion project. In February, the council directed us to find a path forward that would allow for construction to be completed in time for the Olympics. Your CAO and CLA met with various stakeholders, including the joint venture, and as was proposed in February, there were some complications that would have prevented us from moving forward on this project on a timely basis to be done in time for the Olympics. As a result, your CAO and CLA pivoted and came up with an alternative, which basically, originally, it was supposed to be a design, build, finance, operations, and maintenance agreement with the joint venture. In the interest of time, because we could not get all of those things done, we pivoted to a design build option. And those discussions have led us to this path. It's a very narrow path toward completing construction by March of 2028. Matt will go through the financing of it, but essentially the design build would be done as part with the joint venture. The financing would be done by the city, and the operations and maintenance component of it would be done at a later date. And this will now be divided into a two-step process. What is before you is phase one, where the city would commit to a $55 million expenditure upfront to determine whether we could actually complete this within budget of the $1.4 million that was previously, $1.4 billion that was previously discussed, as well as making sure that it would be completed in time. So I can turn it over to Matt to discuss the financing of this.
Thank you very much. And for the committee's consideration, and we discussed this in our prior report, I am jumping a little bit around on the slides here for expediency's purposes, but it is important to consider, because this is part of our analysis in terms of how we are to pay for a $1.4 billion project, the economic impact to the city and the economic impact to the general fund. And so therefore we commissioned an economic impact analysis, which was presented to this council in the prior report, and it was independent. It was not associated with the convention center or convention businesses. We looked at the jobs created, the visitors that would be likely to be, the new visitors that would be generated with the expanded, modernized convention center. And the impact would be significant. It would, just during construction, generate nearly 7,500 new jobs. It would have ongoing over 2,100 new jobs after the expansion. And the estimate on over the first 10 years of the expansion is that there would be an additional 500,000 attendee days. 500,000 additional stays in our city as a result of an expanded convention center. That would yield $165 million in new spending each year, and for the general fund, over a 30-year period, generate approximately $570 million in the area of business tax, sales tax, parking tax, and transit occupancy tax, hotel tax. That equates to about $19 million a year. And that's important as we think about how we would pay for the debt service. In addition to the general fund taxes that this project would yield when it is up and running. It would also yield, and let me get to the, it would also yield direct revenue to the convention center in the form of revenue that would come through events, booking fees, food and beverage, et cetera, for additional signage, which would be part of the project, and also from additional parking. So we would look at that additional revenue. We would look at the additional revenue that would be generated by the additional stays to the general fund as the principal ways to cover the debt service. What we are looking at in terms of a $1.4 billion project, and again, I do want to emphasize that this third way, this new approach, is a construction-only approach. We would not be considering the operations and maintenance. Those costs would be dealt with separately. We would come back to this body and the full council should the project move forward with recommendations for certainly for operations of the facility, and then we would discuss maintenance. Currently, we're maintaining the facility through MICLA on an annual basis as needed. Although, because there has been consideration of an expanded project, there has been significant deferred maintenance. If we were to finance with tax-exempt debt, we would be looking at a total cost, a total project cost of $4.7 billion, and the debt service on that would be roughly $97 million a year. We also are making an assumption of what the annual operation and maintenance costs would be as a way of having a more fair comparison to the two previous proposals that you had in front of you. So we would be looking at, after the revenues, as I had just mentioned, about $96 million in direct revenue from the project, $19 million in additional general fund revenue on average due to the additional economic activity. The city would be on the hook for approximately $43 million a year. As it relates in terms of comparison, the bonds that we recently paid off on the construction of the South Hall, that was a cost of about $50 million a year to the city. So in terms of, as we would compare to certainly the public-private partnership that was considered in our prior report, this is a much more affordable and would provide a much more affordable approach that would provide much more flexibility to the city as it relates to managing the operation and maintenance cost. It would also take advantage of the city's excellent credit ratings, and we would be using tax-exempt debt as well. We would not be using taxable debt. We would not be relying on private equity to fund the construction. As it relates to the recommendations in the report that the CLA touched on, we are asking for authorization and recommending that we move forward with the first and necessary phase of this project, which is the early works. There is significant work that needs to be done over the next 6 months before construction can begin, and to determine whether the construction can be completed on the timeline that we've discussed. So those early works, that additional design, that site investigation, would need to happen. That would need to happen regardless. There's additional work that would need to happen regardless of when we did this project. But we would need to, and we would need to fund that. So of the $55 million that the report recommends, nearly $37 million is for the early works agreement. And then there is also other costs associated with work that has already been done by APCLA. And then we would need to substantially staff up at the city level and also bring on additional outside counsel and consultants to assist us in working through and developing the project agreement, should there be one, and to help manage the project moving forward, because of course the city will, although we would be looking to contract with APCLA for the construction management, we will have to play a very a big role in making sure that everything gets done on time. I can stop there and open it up for questions unless you'd like to.
Just to touch on the timeline for this, so if the council were to approve this, for the next 6 months, we would be working on the early works agreement, getting everything ready to determine whether we can actually proceed and get this project done in time and within the prescribed budget. That would be 6 months of very intensive work. During that period of time, if we are able to move forward, we will be bringing back to City Council the project agreement, which would move the construction forward. I will have to say, though, that this timeline that's indicated on the slide, we don't have a lot of room for error on this. We cannot be in construction during the Olympics because we do risk losing events outside of the city, potentially, definitely outside of the area if we are under construction. And so we'll have to figure out ways to mitigate that. Your transportation your Trade, Travel, and Tourism Committee did take action to instruct us to attempt to deal with that as part of the project agreement. This proposal is not without risk as it relates to timing. You know, there is this initial $55 million expenditure, which, as CAO has indicated, very likely we would need to spend if we were to proceed with any LACC expansion effort. So it would be part of the expenditure that we would need to be doing if we are to expand. And I don't think that there's a question that the Convention Center as an economic engine in this city and for this entire region, that it being a city asset, it is important that it be brought up to standards. The question is, of course, about timing. And so the risk is that spending this money, we may find out that it may not be feasible in terms of costs, it may not be feasible in terms of timing. So that is something to recognize, but of course, everything, all the work product that would be done would be a work product of the city. And that is something that if there is any concern with construction that and not being done in time, that we could proceed at a later date. So I think with that, we don't have anything else to add. We're happy to entertain questions.
Sure. I'll start us out. Just specifically on that point, so what would be the safeguards that we would have to ensure if we did move forward that it would, if you found out in this $55 million early works, that yes, it's feasible, but it's, we have to hit every mark in order to get there. What are the assurances that we would have that it would actually be delivered in time, and that we wouldn't be in that nightmare scenario where we're in construction during the Olympics?
So that would be contemplated in the project agreement. So this is the approval that is in front of you today is for the early works. We would come back by the end of the year with a negotiated project agreement that would have the requirements and the expectations and the guardrails that we would need to ensure that it would be delivered on time. We will need to negotiate a development fee that would be tied to the timeliness of the delivery of the project.
Okay, and obviously that's going to be a critical piece that we're all going to have to look at when it's in black and white to make sure that if we go down this road, that it gets developed, that it's not only a development fee that's at risk because it's much more of a cost to us than that development fee, but that there's other ways that we're going to be held.
So to that point, one of the reasons that we could come back and recommend that that we pause the project is if we are unable to, in a timely manner, reach a suitable project agreement with appropriate safeguards to the city. So that will be very important. We will start working on that concurrent with the early works. We're not going to wait till the 6 months. We're going to start working on that immediately. But if we are unable to reach a suitable agreement that appropriately safeguards the city, our recommendation would not be to proceed.
And then I wanted to ask a follow-up on something I heard one of the speakers talk about. It was talked about private equity, and I think it was Robert Grant from Painters who was talking about the importance of it not just being the risk of the city, that obviously there's a lot of private industries making a lot of money on this. So what skin in the game does that our non-city partners have in this financially? Or are we just paying them to do a job, or are they going to be putting up risk and dollars?
So I would say that as part of the project agreement, that's where the skin will be in the game, right? If we will need assurances that this project be done in time and within budget, right? And so Matt alluded to it, and it was actually discussed somewhat during Trade, Travel, and Tourism, that there needs to be adequate, as part of the project agreement, that there needs to be ways to address and reward timely construction, timely delivery versus delayed construction and delayed delivery.
Right, but
So those are all things that will be taken up as part of that project agreement that we will be bringing back to council and will require council approval.
But beyond that, I mean, that's sort of that's an arrangement you would have with any contractor that you're building with. But this is different, and this is a project that's going to be of great benefit to the city, but it's also going to be of great benefit to many private industry folks, and certainly AEG and others who are going to be putting on events there. So are they investing in this as well, or is this just solely the city dollars?
So this would be a city finance project, and I will say, I think the concept, I understand the concept that private businesses will benefit from an expanded convention center, but that's really the question, the decision that you have before you. Is it worth a city investment to expand a city facility that will attract more visitors to the city, that will spend money that will benefit all parts of the city, not just the city's general fund, although the general fund will benefit. I actually disagree that private equity involved in this arrangement would be beneficial to the city, because you're going to have to be guaranteeing a return to those investors at a higher rate than the city can borrow. And so that's why we're recommending a city-financed proposal, and not a proposal that requires you to pay at a much higher return private investment. We would be paying for it in any case. It's not that it would be cheaper if there were private investment. In fact, that was part of the P3 deal that we had concerns about. Those costs and those returns to investors were built in to the 30-year cost, and we were not comfortable with recommending that.
And there will be benefit to the city, because dollars that are paid on the project will be given back to the economy, either through spending or through increased business taxes or increased sales taxes. So all of those benefits do accrue to the city. So expanded development, to the extent that it helps with other private entities, that will be a benefit to the city in terms of the tax revenues that are generated to the city, as well as investments from the dollars earned from those workers and the jobs that are created.
Right. Obviously, we've already accounted for some of that benefit in the pricing of this. We're capturing a lot of the benefit that we're assuming, and then we're using that to finance it. Obviously, for us financially, we want to make sure that those benefits exceed the cost of just financing it, that it actually benefits the city, above and beyond that. And I know it's always, on these economic equations, the externalities, you can always look a step further and a step further in terms of the correlated benefits to see the finances there.
But also bear in mind too, Mr. Chair, is that, this is, it's almost like buying a house, right? So there may be output for the period of time that we're paying the debt, but at the end of that, we own it, and that's an asset to the city. So that's another way of looking at it, right?
And then, speaking of the timing of the debt, when would the city begin to make the debt payments? You know, how much would be paid for the debt service? You mentioned like 97 a year, but when would that actually start?
So we would structure, and thank you for that, we would structure the debt so that the general fund would be making it, we would be making the first debt service payment out of the general fund in 2028 after the project is open and operational. And that would be of approximately $35 million for the first year, and then approximately $97 million a year after that for the next 29.
I have a bunch of other questions, but I want to keep it rotating. So, Ms. Rodriguez, would you like to go next?
Sure. First of all, I just want to acknowledge and thank everybody for coming out. This is an important asset and an important project for everyone in the city. But we also can't ignore the timing that we're in right now. Just to, you know, say what is blatantly obvious to all of us is that we're in a very tight time crunch. And while I appreciate what the CLA says is that we're going to work very hard for 6 months to try and make these dates, I know this is the only thing on your plate, right? You know, everyone just has to be mindful of the realities that we're living in, financially and just timing. And so while I've heard a lot about whether or not, you know, this is not just about the Olympics, correct. Unfortunately, we can't ignore the timeline that we're in right now and that we're abutting the planned activities surrounding the Olympics and the risk involved with all of that. So we have to take all of these things in its totality. Matt, so you mentioned, for example, so I know there's been previous iterations of this agreement, and you know, we've lamented about how far all of this goes back, and I know Sharon has as well. When you and I were first on the Board of Public Works, I remember seeing the original plan and concept back in 2013-14. So now that we're here, a decade later, we're now talking about this as we are in, you know, what we know is dire financial circumstances in the city with a very, you know, difficult outlook in the next handful of fiscal years. Talk to me about why O&M. We know that O&M, as part of, for example, even our recreation and park facilities, for example, we did Prop K. Prop K, we went and built all these facilities and then realized by the time Prop K was over, all of the facilities that we just finished building were in disrepair because there was no O&M baked in to the facility development. So when you talk about this new deal, and I just want to frame it for everybody, because these are taxpayer dollars. This is not monopoly money. This is taxpayer dollars. We're talking about a $55 million investment right now that, with financing, is essentially going to cost us, we'll just call it roughly $100 million to taxpayers, right? So, and that's assuming our bond rating is solid and everything stays the same, that nothing is affected by it, that rate goes up. So we'll just call it $100 million that we're going to have to pay just to get the plan before we can decide whether or not to stick a shovel in the ground. So I want to be clear so everyone understands what we're talking about here. $100 million just to determine whether or not, should we do this or not? Can we do this or not? So, in this new deal, why was O&M not included?
So I'll answer that in two ways. Number one, O&M, when I say O&M isn't included, I'm not suggesting that we're not accounting for having to cover those costs. What I'm saying is that we're not building it into a 30-year agreement as was the proposal with the public-private partnership. That would have been a 30-year contract that would have rolled in all of the costs associated with operating the facility, constructing the facility, maintaining the facility to certain standards over 30 years, and then we would have paid an annual rate, an annual fee to the private entity over that 30 years, which was at a very high rate for a number of reasons, because you'd have to build in all of the assumptions and all of the risk of operating, of maintaining. All of the construction risk would need to be built into that, and we would pay for it. We were, and in our view, certainly my view, it was at a price point that we could not recommend. We do, and let me go to that slide, we do make an assumption that in our analysis that says the general fund could be on the hook for an average of $43 million a year over the next 30 years. We're assuming, I think, a very conservative number of $62 million a year in operations and maintenance. So that is in that number. The debt service amount for construction alone is about $96 million. The amount of direct revenue that we expect the convention center to yield, the expanded convention center to yield, is about $96 million. The benefit of separating the O&M from the construction is that we'll be able to manage that independently. We'll be able to, we currently, by the way, have a contract with AEG to manage the convention center. Perhaps we extend that contract, we renegotiate that. That is something that this council will consider concurrent to construction. We'll figure that out, but that did not need to be rolled into the construction decision. And then maintenance. We currently maintain the facility through MICLA. Over the last several years, we have budgeted about $25 million for maintenance costs. We expect that to go up for maintaining a larger facility. But we wanted to maintain maximum flexibility to the city, and we did not want to build in to the total cost unnecessary risk of a 30-year projection of O&M.
But O&M, we know by practice, given like what we've learned with our recreation and parks facilities, for example, or our fire facilities, or any facilities that we build, we know that O&M continues to be one of the greatest factors in our costs going forward on an annualized basis. So my question is, wouldn't we be in a better situation to negotiate terms that would include O&M to ensure that we're not on the hook for it, or taxpayers are going to have to pay for that delta, because you could get, and you could probably get better terms in advance than as you're going through it. Because I think, again, and this is just, again, going back to what our practical experience is and knowing what the real costs have been associated with O&M of a lot of our facilities. We would be negotiating from a deficient position, because we have two choices. They're either going to say, well, you can deal with it, right, because it's not negotiated up front. They could say, well, what's your alternative? I feel like we would actually be in a lesser posture in that conversation than if we bake that in up front. And that's my concern. It's kind of like, it's much like, for example, and I voted against the street furniture contract. We advanced a lot of money on the street furniture contract, but now we're also still assuming all the liability associated with that because we weren't indemnified, right? And so now we have a lot of liability and risk. We've funded everything that was previously absorbed from JC, just as a comparison. And so in the hopes that the returns would be much greater in the future based on advertising. And so I use those examples to say that we're, again, just given our current fiscal position, isn't it more prudent to know what it's going to be? Because we're still talking about a $43 million net impact to the general fund. And so that's where I'm kind of, I'm asking from that perspective.
Yeah, no, and that's a completely fair question. And I think the bottom line is, it's a city facility. We are going to pay, the taxpayers are going to pay for O&M either way. And the difference here is, does the city maintain discretion over how to manage that, how to fund that over the next several years? Or do we hand that over to a private entity that would do what they feel is necessary and then send us the bill? We're going to be paying either way. In that $43 million general fund impact figure, again, I just want to stress, we're removing O&M from the deal. We're removing O&M from what we would be asking you to approve. We're not removing an assumption that O&M will need to be paid for by the city, and that is included in the $43 million. In fact, I would argue that the annual set aside of $62 million a year is a substantial number, and that is certainly a greater number than we have been contributing to the convention center in recent past.
I think it's important to point out that operations and maintenance is always contemplated. So we are going to be paying operations and maintenance costs. It's just not part of this deal now. Originally, under the P3 that we had been discussing for the last few years, operations and maintenance was part of it, part of the whole deal structure, but it was also very expensive. And so, you know, we were paying a premium on it. There is a cost to it because we're paying private industry for operations and maintenance. It's not to say that operations and maintenance will not be done. It's just what we're saying is we're deferring that decision on who operates and who maintains to a later date. And it may be such that we may, as in prior years, we may take it on in the city. We had done operation maintenance up until the last, you know, prior decades. It was only in the last 10 years that operations was actually turned over to AEG. I think it was 10 years.
Well, I mean,
So-
I think, you know, yes, the idea that we would actually assign ourselves to that, we also know what our circumstances are right now in the city, right? I mean, the only reason why we're talking about adding positions to engineering, for example, after they were decimated in budget, is because all of a sudden we're having this conversation. And so we have to remember that we are at an absolute, you know, all of the city staff is running in a deficiency. And so when we talk about O&M and that, well, we'll take it on, there's a cost somewhere that's going to be borne in staff time and actual costs. And whether or not, and who that's maintained and how we plan for it as we continue to basically eviscerate staffing levels here in the city, I think it's a really important part of the conversation that we have to consider in terms of the financials of this conversation. But that's in its totality. Right now, we're only talking about, again, going back to, you know, I'm going to just call it $100 million because financing it is $100 million. $100 million just to determine whether or not this is something we should stick a shovel in and make good before the Olympics arrive. Because as much as, you know, you can't say both things. You can't say, oh, well, you know, we'll get it done by the Olympics, and then say, well, it's not about the Olympics. It will affect all the planned activities that are already scheduled right now that are being planned for concurrently, and you can't ignore that timeline. But, okay, I'll come back for more questions.
Chair Slofsky.
Thank you. I just have two questions. One about the non-hotel and one about the hotel that's not happening, and then a question about the time frame for construction. So how much confidence do you have, based on the information that you have, in the 27-month construction timeline, or even 36 months? Because if we can't finish this with a buffer before the Olympics, my sense is that we shouldn't move forward today. And so if there's some sense of confidence that if we finalize an agreement by the end of the year, and then we have a construction period with some additional buffer, we can get there, then that's one thing. But if there's not confidence in that construction timetable, I would like to know that now.
I think your CAO and CLA will be on top of that. And if there is any chance that we are not going to be able to complete construction in time, we will be coming back to this council. The whole purpose of this early works agreement is to give us that opportunity to make that assessment.
But you
And-
wouldn't, sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you
Yeah.
wouldn't be advising us to move ahead with this early works assessment if you didn't think there was a good possibility that we'd be able to get the work done in the timetable that we're
It is a
talking about.
very narrow path. And we may know very quickly whether this is going to work out or not, which is why we were very firm in dealing with, in working through the term sheet and the early works agreement, that whatever work product is generated up until the point of the next few months, that it would belong to the city. And not all of the expenditures would occur up front, but that they would be incurred over a period of time. So it's time and materials, we're not paying for it up front. So, but with that said, the council directed us to find a path. We believe that if it is the desire to have construction done by March of 2028, if not sooner, that this is your only path.
So we're approving a big slug of money to figure out whether or not the path is viable. You're not going to spend all of that $50+ million immediately. And if it becomes clear quickly that it's not viable, you'll come back and tell us and not spend the full 50 and then come back at the end of the year and say, hey, we spent the 50 million, it's not viable, right?
Correct.
Okay, right?
100%. I mean, that is the purpose, and that was, we had lengthy discussions in drafting the term sheet that's in front of you that will govern the early works period to insisting on that exactly, that we need to, we would only be paying for the work that has actually been done, and that work needs to be scheduled in a way that will yield a determination on the feasibility of the timeline as quickly in that 6-month early works period as possible. And if there's doubt as to whether it can be done, we would not recommend moving forward the project. To your initial question, yes, we have seen schedules in the various iterations. We had been looking at that approximately 3-year construction period. So that is consistent with what we have been discussing and what we had been assuming for quite some time. It's just now that we're approaching, the midway point of 2024. Those margins are very narrow.
And you'll bake in carrots and sticks into whatever contract we enter into to make sure that if we start, we're going to finish it ahead of the Olympics enough so that we have comfort and can provide that comfort to LA 28.
Correct, and that will come back to the project agreement, and the authorization for spending on construction will come back to you, and that's where that document will be.
Okay, thank you. I just have one more question about the hotel piece of this. So the new EWA doesn't contemplate an expansion of the JW Marriott. We all know we don't have enough hotel rooms right now to handle existing demand. If we are to expand the footprint of the convention center, how are we going to ensure there's space for attendees to stay? Because I think we're going to have a hard time attracting large conventions without the room blocks needed to cover attendees. So what are those conversations looking like?
I think I heard someone say, if you build it, they will come. We have made a concerted effort to have hotel incentives to attract hotels to downtown LA. And we actually have made progress in bringing more hotels. The dynamics today, you will hear AEG say the dynamics today are not good for that. But I do believe that if you have a convention center expansion, that will provide a base for economic activity, that I believe that will actually spur additional development. But that remains to be seen.
Sure.
I'm always hopeful.
Well, there'll be a demand for it for sure.
Yes.
If we go ahead. Okay, thank you. No more questions.
No problem. Ms. Rodriguez for a follow-up?
Yeah, so, I mean, I understand the whole chicken and egg situation when it comes to, the rooms and, okay, if we invest in this, then it'll prompt this. But we're still woefully insufficient in terms of our plan or our available rooms. And that's one of the biggest challenges. When I was up very early this morning looking at some comparables for conventioneering space, and because of my previous professional life, was involved with an organization that did a lot of conventioneering. I know that LA was never on the map for a lot of those activities because of the insufficient amount of rooms within the walking proximity of the convention center. And so given kind of the comps of what's being proposed for our facility, has there been conversations in terms of what the room night, available room nights need to be concurrent to that in order to actually make any new bookings feasible? Because it would have to be concurrent. The absence of that doesn't enable any greater conventioneering happening because we still don't have the room nights available. When I was going through and just looking at, San Diego, 36,000, Georgia, Orlando, like obviously Vegas being the #1, in terms of available room nights. That's why they get, that's also a big factor in how they get the convention activity. And so my question is has there been an evaluation of exactly how many, based on the capacity that the proposed expansion is going to accommodate, what is the additional rooms in the immediate vicinity? Because the close proximity, I mean, I remember even back when they had the DNC here and people were over at the Biltmore or at different locations, everything is kind of spread out. But we know that that concentration in the immediate area is important. Has there been any conversations around the amount of rooms in order to actually fulfill the bookings associated with that level of conventioneering that would generate the revenue that we need to see?
And that was part of the economic impact analysis that we conducted, over 10 years, the analysis suggested an additional 500,000 stays, 500,000 room nights, so that about 50,000 additional nights per year due to the expanded additional conventions and expanded conventions. So that would be our guide. I don't have an exact number of rooms that would be required to absorb that capacity, but that would be the additional capacity required.
Okay, and following up on that, I just want to make sure we're not counting the TOT more than once, because the rooms, some of these hotels were built with subsidies where we basically funnel the TOT back into the hotel. And then here we're accounting for the TOT as purchasing our making it viable to do it. And then, of course, in our budgeting process, we account for expanded TOT to fund our services. And I know you guys are good about that, but help assure us that we're not double or triple counting TOT for the many different things that we ascribe that revenue to.
So the economic study that was done, it was actually attached to our December report, and I don't remember the numbers completely, but within that report, the consultant did consider the current stock of hotels. It was not estimating expanded number of hotels. In terms of the incentive deals that are on some of our hotels today, those incentives were not contemplated as part of the base. And then in terms of the general fund budget that we estimate every year, that is based on a baseline, right, of hotel nights and estimated TOT revenues. So this would be the amount, the delta over and above the additional room nights that would be generated, because even with vacancy levels in some of the hotels during the rest of the year, there should be some capacity, and it's not just around downtown. You know, Ms. Rodriguez is correct in that part of the attraction of the convention center is hotels in close proximity, and that's why the council had adopted a hotel incentive policy a decade and a half, 2 decades ago, to actually spur that, to increase the number of hotels that are available within walking distance. We can pull some of those records and provide that information to you. It's been a long time since I've looked at it, so it may be a good refresher as well. But those things, in terms of the additional TOT revenue, have been taken into account as part of the economic analysis that was done last year.
So some of the new rooms that are going to be needed, are we assuming that we're going to get some new hotels to
I don't believe we're contemplating new hotels. I'm
No,
looking around.
that wasn't contemplated in the study. The analysis has, of the $570 million in general fund revenue over 30 years, $400 million of it came from would come from additional TOT. That was compared to a baseline of a status quo no expansion projection. So they projected out where we would be over 30 years with our current stock with no expansion, and then compared that to expansion. And they did take into account the TOT agreements that we have with some of the hotels.
But that assumes that we have enough capacity at the moment. I didn't think we did.
Excuse me? That assumes that we have
enough capacity. I mean, do we have enough capacity hotel rooms to support a fancy new convention center? Or wouldn't we assume that we get more hotels out of this?
we may not have capacity in the area, but I think it took into account the greater Los Angeles area. So it's more than just downtown, but they were looking at TOT that would be generated outside of downtown LA as well.
So assuming that we move forward and everything, and then someone hopefully says, I'm going to build a new hotel, I'm going to buy the graffiti building and turn it into a big hotel or something, and then they come to us and say, well, I want to do that, but in order to do that, I need a TOT subsidy. Are we then stuck because we've already spent that TOT? Because we want the new hotel. We just sort of spent the TOT on building the convention center. Then they're going to say the only way they can build this hotel right next to the convention center is to take the TOT. What are we? And I want to put it out there so that if this does happen, that we know that we want the hotel, but we're not going to be able to give away the TOT again.
So just recall, TOT deals are all at the discretion of the mayor and council. We don't have to go forward with TOT deals, right? But that will be your option to decide that if by chance somebody does come in and requests a hotel incentive deal.
Okay. Mr. McCosker.
Thank you very much. As you know, I had a chance to hear a lot of this in Triple T, and I want to say again, thank you for your hard work on this. I know that it's been a long time coming, and I know that a lot of work has gone into it, and I appreciate that you answered a bunch of the questions that I had. First, just to follow up on this briefly and then to go to something else. On the analysis that we have here in our packets and up on the screen still, we're talking about TOT off of rooms that exist today and based on the deals, whether we have them or not, for tax pitchbacks, right? So
Yes.
New hotels, should this generate new hotels, and I'm not going to be Pollyannish about this, but should this generate new hotels and new capacity, we are building new capacity and new revenues.
Yes, I mean, potentially. Well, I'll just
Potentially.
use an
I get that we could be shifting back and forth.
Right, it could be shifted, right?
This also assumes TOT at our current rate, correct?
That is correct.
Yes. Okay. On the term sheet, remind me when you expect the term sheet to come back?
The term sheet, should council approve the report, they would be authorizing the term sheet, and then we would use that term sheet to finalize a early works agreement.
Right.
Based on that term sheet, we would not have time to return to council with the final early works agreement. We would come back to council with the project agreement.
Yeah, thank you. So term sheet is good to go, and then you get the early works agreement, you get started, and then you come back and I recall at Triple T, there was a series of modifications or additional conditions where we set up a working group and regular reports, and then the drop dead date, and then a admonition that we add in incentives and penalties, which I'm sure you are considering anyway. Have you had a chance now to review all that, and do you feel that those are useful and helpful tools to keep us on track and keep the council informed?
We're comfortable with the recommendations from Triple T, yes.
Great. And then when we do see, well, we will get reports back, but when do you expect that we will see sort of the final report or recommendation on the financing structure? Because I still hold out hope that it doesn't have to be 30 years, and I know that we have our policies. I don't even think it has to be sort of a smooth, even burn. But I know that we have our policies. When will we see it come back?
That would be concurrent with the project agreement at the end of 24.
And when do you think you'd be in a position to recommend what is the path for the O&M?
Probably during the construction period. I mean, we'll be working on it. I mean,
Yeah.
this is not something that we're going to take lightly or wait to the last minute like this.
Mm-hmm.
But we will be working on O&M, and we need to consider all the options. Whatever works best for the city. But that would be
Yeah.
something that is more important as the building is constructed and in operation.
So we essentially have a placeholder for $1.8 billion for the O&M over the course of the 30 years, which is also a placeholder. And then during construction and following negotiations, you'd come back with a recommendation for how much of it makes sense to keep on ourselves, because that way we can control costs, we can also control what we invest in it, or how much we would contract away, which gives us less control, but will be measured against, certainty, labor force, price, all of that. That'll come during construction?
I imagine it will come during construction.
Again, to be clear, we have an O&M program right now. We contract with AEG to operate, and we cover maintenance through MICLA. That's our steady state. And we may recommend something different.
Right. So we have a structure for O&M, but we don't have a pattern or a burn rate for O&M because we're holding off. We're deferring a lot of maintenance, not just for financial reasons, but because of this question.
Correct.
Great. Thank you. Thanks again. I really appreciate all this work.
Yeah, a lot of amazing work has been put in this. I want to ask about the assumptions on parking revenue. There's a big chunk of it is parking revenue, right?
Approximately of the annual 96 million, approximately 24 million of that would be in parking revenue, yes.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not going to poke holes in that, but I guess I'm going to put my little flag in the ground that as I look into the future, I hope and I don't think we're going to get that kind of revenue in parking. And the reason being is that we're investing in transit, and we're moving toward having subscription vehicles and driverless vehicles and all that other stuff where people are going to be dropped off and they're not going to pay the $60, $80 to park at the convention center. But so I'm just putting it out here so that in several years you can say I told you so. But I'm not expecting you to respond to that. But I don't think that's.
It's okay, our transit isn't getting built on time either.
Well, transit's not happening fast enough, so maybe that'll help us get with the parking revenue. But I also think technology is changing, and we're not, people aren't going to need to park. But that's for other people to look at. I'm just putting that out there so I can say that in the future. Colleagues, any additional? The Pico Boulevard thing closing. Do you think that? I know we're trying to increase convention space. Would closing Pico at the ground level increase usable space? Is that something to think about?
The part of the constraints that we're working under would not allow for a change in the design at this point. It is what we have. Is that what you were suggesting?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm indirectly pointing out. I mean, I do want to move forward with this the way we're discussing, but I want to vet these things, and that is the downside of working with an old plan that's 10, 15 years old, is that things like innovations like that, where we could expand the size, are not being we're letting that go in favor of our need to move forward quickly in order to be able to accommodate the Olympics. That's a downside, and I'm just sort of daylighting it. And I know you're aware of it, but it's important for us to realize.
It's the reality of where we are. Should it be found to be infeasible to complete the project on time, or should the project be financially infeasible, or should we not be able to reach a suitable project agreement, and we recommend ultimate delay? That is a question that we would certainly contemplate for the project in 28 and beyond.
Got it.
It could be a very different project even. So I mean, but that remains to be seen. What we're moving forward with is the project that we have in place, the ones that we have schematic design for, the project that we've been discussing, the one that contemplates the full scope of the 190,000 square feet, the 55,000 in meeting room space, and the 95,000 in multi-purpose space. So that is the scope of the project that we're looking at. Any difference in it would actually probably delay it because there is an existing EIR that's already been approved on it.
Again, the perfect is the enemy of the good, and at some point you gotta move forward on something that's good. So I get that too.
Well, it's
Ms.
only been
Rodriguez.
20 years of waiting for good. Right, Sharon? So, Well, I am absolutely confident because every project we ever have involved ourselves in has been on time and on budget, right? Like the 6th Street Bridge, like our transit, like you name it. This timeline is really giving me a lot of heartburn, as I know it gives you a lot of heartburn, because best case scenario is with this narrow timeline, we're gonna make, we're gonna figure this out on a project scope that was developed a decade ago, right?
At least.
Huh?
At least.
At least. So, again, reflecting on all of those, the kind of winds not working in our favor, we'll just say it, right? Both financially because of where we stand today. For me to commit because I want to see, I was excited about it when I heard, when we looked at those plans 10 years ago. I was excited about it. Still excited about it. Still ready to see our city be the #1 convention space, so I can finally tell some of my former colleagues that I used to work with, hey, you know what, you're going to want to come to LA now, right? We've got it all worked out for you. But the reality is that given the timing of the Olympics, what limited activities we already have in the actual city proper, not going to SoFi, not going to Long Beach, not going to everywhere else, that Oklahoma City, this is about making sure that we are ready to receive the world. And what gives me a lot of great concern is just the practical reality of our current fiscal situation, the fact that we went through this, exhaustive exercise over the last several weeks. It wasn't that long ago. It's not that far in the rearview mirror yet. I'm still recovering from that. And that we would put ourselves and financially obligate ourselves to a 10-year-old plan that I think if we were going to look at it with fresh eyes and not put ourselves under the gun of this, could probably prepare a much greater conventioneering space that perhaps would be further baked out for 10 years of newer innovations that weren't considered a decade ago. And so I'm just, it's all of those issues give me a great deal of concern, and I recognize that this has been a long time coming and we want to do it and we need to do it, and that's not a question. And I know the value of this asset, but I also know the practical reality of everybody that has been, I recognize the circumstances that we're in right now, and I feel like, the O&M concerns for me are a big one still. That hangs over our heads, because I know for me to not have that baked out in advance, to really know what our full net is going to be going forward, there's still a lot of questions for me on this. And again, just because, it's like, this is just, it was slow until it was fast, until it came at us, right? And like I said, I know you guys, this is the only thing you're working on right now. I obviously I say that in jest, but we have a lot of competing priorities. And so I just, it just really gives me a lot of, I have a really hard time swallowing the idea that we're going to commit what will essentially be, if, look, we don't want to call it $100 million, let's call it $50 million. But $50 million to perhaps come to a conclusion of, yeah, you know what, we're not going to make it. And just practical experience, being on this council, being on the Board of Public Works, being around any development project in the history of Los Angeles, I have yet to see, especially more recently, when I look at the People Mover, for example, that's $200 million oversubscribed from its original budget and behind schedule, and it affected the bond rating that's costing more. I look at real-world examples about the delays that occur with these large-scale projects, and with staring at these dates that we've got. We haven't even talked about FIFA And we know that there's going to be activities around FIFA as well that are programmed, and that's only 2 years out. So I just really worry about what those real-world implications are going to be, and I really fear losing what few events, and I'm just going to say it because it's true. We aren't getting enough events as far as I'm concerned with the Olympics. They've got LA's name all over it, but we're actually not getting the real meat, because this was originally supposed to be a no-build Olympics, and that's what the commitment was to the public. That's everything that was said. And now we're having this conversation right now to try and do something and build something out in a very compressed timeline with a lot of unanswered questions and liabilities going into the future at a time when we are just fiscally strapped. And so, I thank you guys for doing this. I know, again, like I said, you got a lot of competing priorities. Everybody does in this city family. There's a lot of competing priorities. And obviously, a lot of interest from a lot of different sectors. And this is an important asset for our city going forward. But there's also a lot that needs to fall into place to make this a real viable and successful project that is fully utilized to the build out that we're doing. And that includes even the rooms that need to be built. And so, I thank you for all this work. I just think it's, for me, it just feels premature, and I really want us to build a world-class facility that creates the benefit and the true asset that it really is.
So colleagues, this is obviously it's a very big deal, but we also have 55 other items that we're considering today, and it's almost 4:30. So colleagues, any last thoughts, comments, questions? Then I'd like to move us to a vote. Okay. So the vote would be on concurring with the Trade, Travel, and Tourism Committee and to approve the item as amended. And that would move it to full council.
When is full council when?
Well, I can't decide that, but I'm presuming that it would be immediately on Tuesday, right?
Before break, though. Can we?
It's already on the,
Make sure it goes before
there's a placeholder for Tuesday if we approve it.
Fantastic.
So let's call the roll.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris Dawson, absent. Councilmember McOsker.
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
No.
Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Yes.
3 ayes, 1 no, and this item is approved.
All right. So we have 55 more items. So let's move to the next item.
That's $1 million an item.
Yes. Next item is what, item 4, I believe?
Item 4, correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Item number 4, Los Angeles Department of Transportation report relative to Proposition A status for forecast for transit services.
Well, with item 4, I don't know who's coming forward, but I just wanted to add minor amendments to the Transportation Committee recommendations. I'll cut to the chase on that. What I wanted to do is add a new paragraph 3F, which is potential funding for a pilot on permanent Warner Center circulator to supplement or replace the Metro Line 601, and amend paragraph 8 as follows: to instruct LADOT to report back in 30 days with options for providing interim transit service, including but not limited to piloting certain days or hours in the area of the future Boyle Heights West Dash and other Phase 1 routes, which are like in Sylmar and in the West Valley, that have not yet been implemented while the updated TSA is being conducted. Perhaps we can just vote on that unless anyone wants to comment.
Do we have a second, Mr. Chair?
Second.
Second by Mr. McOsker. Okay, let's vote on that as amended.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris Dawson, absent. Councilmember McOsker.
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Aye.
Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Yes.
4 ayes, and this item is approved as amended.
Okay, I think we have another small item, 17.
Item 17, City Administrative Officer Report relative to the Homelessness Emergency Account, General City Purposes Fund 16th Status Report for the week ending May 31st, 2024, and funding recommendations. This item is referred to the Housing and Homelessness and Budget and Finance and Innovation Committees.
I don't think your mic is on.
We couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. Oh, that's better. Item number 17, City Administrative Officer Report relative to the Homelessness Emergency Account, General City Purposes Fund 16th Status Report for the week ending May 31st, 2024, and funding recommendations.
All right.
And for the record, Mr. Chair, the Housing and Homelessness Committee has waived consideration of this item.
They've waived it, right, so we're hearing it here. Okay. So we know they're, why don't we just cut right to it? Go ahead and we'll do a presentation.
Sure. Just one moment. Matt Szabo, City Administrative Officer. Okay, so before you, members of the committee, is the 16th report on the Homelessness Emergency Account, or HEA, as I will refer to, and it is the first report which is requesting funding under the budget instructions for 24-25. So what you have before you, it's the first adjusted process for the Homelessness Emergency Account. Our office was directed to provide monthly recommendations for funding allocations consistent with the program at the direction of the Mayor's office. We have included in this report the status of previous allocations, the amount available and expended, programmatic metrics, services provided, past expenditures, and how the proposed allocations will meet the city's legal obligations. Also in the report, at the direction of this committee, includes the number of operations, the locations of the operations, the number of participants placed in interim housing and hotels, the exits from the program, the costs associated with each operation, the nightly room rate for each location, and the cost of service per individual. We also include data on all operations since the beginning of Inside Safe and identify sources of funding that are being used to pay for staff work associated with preparation of these reports and monitoring. The information in front of you also includes a Mayor's Appendix, Appendix 5, which explains how locations were chosen, all departmental resources used, community engagement performed, and the programs implemented to prevent repopulation. And when I complete the initial presentation, the Mayor's office will come up to speak about the planned operations for the beginning of the fiscal year. The report, again, is similar to other funding reports that my office releases, including HAP and Roadmap, in the respect, or in the sense that we are we're no longer reporting on dollars already spent, but we are recommending appropriations to be made for the purposes identified. And we will go to that, the status first. So what we are looking at for for fiscal 24-25 for the Inside Safe Reserve, we are looking to reappropriate from our current fiscal year $114.2 million. That then we have an additional $80 million, which was part of the new funding, which was part of the 24-25 appropriation. So the total amount available for this fiscal year is $193.2 million. And that is different from the discussion that we had during during the budget approval process. During the budget approval process, our office estimated that 72.5 million would be available to be reappropriated to this fiscal year. And the difference between that and the 114.2 million is simply service provider costs that we assumed would be paid in this current fiscal year for quarters 3 and quarters 4 that we have not yet been billed for. And so we are assuming that those costs will need to be paid at the beginning of next fiscal year. And that is principally why the recommendations in this report include a substantial allocation, a recommendation to approve 55.8 million for the first quarter of fiscal 24-25. The majority of that is that 32.62 million is our expenditures that we assumed would be billed for and paid in this current fiscal year. Those won't be paid now until the first quarter of the coming fiscal year. So that's the reason for the greater reappropriated amount. That is also the reason for the 55.84 million of recommended approvals. It also includes nearly 16 million of ongoing costs for short-term motels for service providers. We would be advancing pay for the Inside Safe service providers. That 15.84 would also cover services at the Mayfair, and it would include the final month of the LA Grand lease. We include 3.86 million for 300 housing navigation slots and 330 time-limited subsidies for the first quarter, and then additional other costs, including storage and homelessness and housing support from the mayor's office. And as it relates to the first quarter, the mayor's office will come up and speak in a moment on the plan for the Inside Safe operations. But we currently are, at least as of May 31st, had 1,265 individuals in motels. At the rate of our capacity, by the way, is roughly 1,400 for this program, and that is if we take out the LA Grand, which will be demobilized, completely demobilized as of the end of July. We have about 1,400 units available for this program, 737 in booking agreements, 367 in occupancy agreements, and then the Mayfair, which is now online, has 294 units. So with a rate thus far in the program of permanently housing 28% of the participants, and other attrition, that will determine the total amount of new participants the program will be able to fund. So there won't be able to be a precise number on that. The mayor's office in their reporting is suggesting that they would conduct 9 to 12 new operations, and then with the funding, the $23 million in new funding for the first part of the fiscal year, they would accommodate a to-be-determined number of new participants depending on interim housing stock availability. So at this time, I would, you can ask questions. Would you like to ask questions on the contents of the report or hear from the mayor's office?
Well, I just want to make it clear, sort of the structure, because you went through that, but just to be clear, because it's a different approach than, as you mentioned, than what we were contemplating in the budget, and part of this because we had to roll the money over. So we were clear that the 80 million of new money would require council approval before that funding is expended. In this case, we're dealing with money that was already expended, but we have to, it really is last year's money, but it has to be spent, essentially loaned out of this year. I just want to make that really clear because I hear what you're saying, which is you're not going back on the way that we structured it, but because basically of the timing that we have to essentially forward fund it or front. I guess it's not really front funding, but we're essentially loaning it to ourselves and then paying it.
Correct. The reappropriated amount wouldn't, due to the city process, wouldn't be available to be drawn upon for about 6 to 8 weeks. So we are recommending an appropriation from the $80 million to cover the cost identified for the new fiscal year, and also the $32 million in costs for service providers for quarters 3 and 4 that won't be paid out this fiscal year.
It makes sense. I want to make sure everyone understands that, and we'll get into the substance of the report, but that the financing arrangement is unique, and just wanted to leave, if anybody has questions on that, we can get that out of the way, but if not, then we can go to the mayor's office.
Yeah, so you can slide that.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lourdes Castro Ramirez, and I serve as the Chief of Housing and Homelessness for Mayor Karen Bass. Thank you, Matt, to you and to your team for the ongoing efforts to ensure that we're delivering the monthly HEA report on time. As Matt mentioned, this is report number 16, and this report will ensure that we're able to provide the information that the council requested before the upcoming recess. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, of the Budget, Finance, and Innovations Committee, first, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your commitment to addressing homelessness both prior to and under the current emergency. Thanks to your efforts and your continued commitment of significant investments to fight the homelessness crisis and to accelerate and create more housing across the city. Together, we can continue to develop an integrated citywide approach of getting people off the streets and demonstrate that homelessness is solvable. We all know too well that homelessness is an issue of life and death. It's a public health and humanitarian crisis, not just a housing crisis. Addressing this requires an all-hands-on-deck and comprehensive approach that brings people inside with housing and services, that continues to accelerate the acquisition and construction of more housing, and that also protects families against evictions. Inside Safe is a citywide program. Since its launch, and in partnership with the council and many partners and service providers, we have safely and successfully brought over 2,700 people indoors with housing and support. Yesterday and today, the Mayor's Inside Safe team helped bring more people experiencing homelessness from CD4, CD8, and CD13. We've also completed multiple operations in every council district and look forward to continuing to work together to break down barriers, to improve services and care, to create citywide strategies, and also to ensure that there's a standard across the board when it comes to outreach, engagement, housing navigation, and needed permanent housing support. Finally, I just, again, want to offer my thanks to the BFI committee and to the council for approving the Mayor's Office of Housing and Homelessness Solutions and Inside Safe budget. As mentioned, a total of $185.5 million was authorized and approved for fiscal year 24-25. We believe the support will allow the city to serve more unhoused Angelenos, expand long-term interim housing units while also meeting the city's obligation under the LA Alliance Agreement, and also, of course, continue to strengthen our housing pipeline and system and preventing people from sliding into homelessness. As we prepare for the new fiscal year and continue to enhance our efforts, we're building on the experience, the lessons learned, and the successes as demonstrated in Roadmap, LA Alliance, and we're integrating that as we operationalize the citywide Inside Safe approach. I look forward to your questions. As Matt mentioned, there's a lot of detail in this report that is very much in response to the instruction and guidance from council. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'll start out with some questions on the, I want to drill down a little bit on, and we've talked about this, but on the LAHSA billing stuff. We discussed this in H&H earlier the month, but everyone has assured us that the city has paid LAHSA, but LAHSA is saying that the city owes LAHSA money, and hence LAHSA can't pay the service providers. But then we're also saying, well, we haven't paid because we haven't been billed. And so I just wanted to sort of put that out there and understand it here, what steps we're taking to ensure that we see the improvements in how LAHSA bills the city. And just to clarify, you know, have we paid? Is it that we haven't been billed, or what? Just to kind of put it out there, what is the issue here with the billing?
So we are current for all for all invoices that we've received for service providers for Inside Safe from LAHSA. There is a current invoice. There is one invoice for Q2 that is in process currently, but all others have been paid. And as I said in my opening, the Q3 and Q4 service provider costs, we have only advanced, provided the 25% advance. So the $32.6 million that we will need to pay in the first quarter, we are assuming we're going to need to pay. We have not been billed for that yet, but we are setting aside those dollars, assuming that we're going to get the bills in the first part.
When did we get bill? When did LAHSA submit bills for Q1 and Q2? And I put this out there also, you know, so that folks know, because a lot of folks listen to this and are trying to figure out, are we slowing things down, or what's the story here?
Ed Gibson, CAO's office. Apologies. I don't recall exactly Q1, and maybe someone else do, but Q2 that Matt was just referring to was submitted on June 6th.
So we didn't get the bill for
Q2
until a couple weeks ago.
That is correct, sir.
But we are current on that bill.
We are processing it as we speak.
Okay. Well, I have a number of questions, but I want to keep it rolling, so I'll turn it over to Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you. So given that, I want to thank you for following the matrix that the CLA developed so that we could actually track the operations with Inside Safe. And I just wanted to be clear, when I look at the numbers of the deployment in the council districts in the order that it was delivered, there appears to be a lot of inequities and not real alignment to even the larger concentrations and populations of homeless. So if you look at, you know, when I count up the number of operations that CD8 received, for example, which in the initial report, again, because there were repopulation deployments in addition to the initial deployments, the report that the CLA first provided with information that it had received from, I guess, a combination of the mayor's office and LAHSA, CD8 had received more than, essentially what would be an equivalent to more than one a month for the better part of a year, and yet CD5 and CD14 got an equivalent amount. What is the methodology in deployment of resources if it was inequitably distributed, where the district with one of the highest concentrations of homelessness in the city, perhaps you could even say in the country, got comparable service deployed to an area that has among the lowest?
Thank you, Councilwoman, and I appreciate the feedback also in terms of the presentation of the Inside Safe operations. As you mentioned, as of this report, we have completed 52 operations that are shown in the report, and we'll continue to use the matrix that aligns to CAO and CLA. With regard to the criteria for selecting encampment sites, we do request each council office to submit their priority encampment sites. Those requests have come in. We have currently over 60 requests that the Inside Safe team are processing. And these priority encampments are then assessed, and the assessment includes, do we have availability for interim housing? Do we have a ready service provider? Do we have the necessary partners at the ready to be part of this effort? And so we will continue to look at the way that the operations are deployed, but I want to reassure you, Councilwoman, that the need is great across the city, and we're doing everything possible to ensure that as those requests come in from council offices, that we're following a methodology that allows for us to assess the resources that are required, and then work in partnership, not just with the city family that is part of the Inside Safe operation, but also with our county partners and, of course, with council offices.
So, but when I see, for example, that operations took place in, you know, because originally what was reported, when I couldn't get an Inside Safe operation, I saw that there was an Inside Safe operation in CD5 with placements that came to CD7. And so when I look at where transports are happening, at least, again, I haven't dug into this, you know, this updated one, and what I would ask, I see that it's also been broken up. It seems like repopulation operations have been aggregated into a separate list, and I think for my purposes, what I would ask is, because I think it misrepresents the frequency with which the resources have been deployed to certain council districts. I would actually like to see, for me, it would be easier that all operations and deployments are in the chronological order of when they were deployed, because I think it gives a more accurate insight as to which council offices are getting serviced far more frequently than others. And so when I look at, for example, I'm trying to find it because I had it marked up on my CLA report, but I saw a number of, oh, here's perfect. There was an operation, encampment operation, 216 to 218 in CD5, but the individuals were placed in CD 13 and 14, 42 placements. And so when I see that, and I think, well, you know, CD 14 already has the highest concentration of unhoused, why wouldn't those individuals in the immediate area or those within that council district get an operation that would tend to the needs of that council district, when they in fact have, clearly they have the availability, because you're placing people from other council districts in there. So, you know, it begs the question, you know, why are certain council districts being afforded these operations, and yet the placements are occurring in council districts that have the highest concentration of unhoused, that they are in fact housing. There's clearly availability in the facilities to place people. So why wouldn't, I mean, I know for the most part mine, you know, I was told I couldn't get an Inside Safe operation for a facility that was in my council district, and you know, your predecessor, I had harsh words with her about it, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, I got it. We're not going to place people from outside of the district there because we've got individuals that are ready to go from within my district. So help me understand the thinking behind that.
Well, as I explained, Councilwoman, there are a number of factors that go into determining where an Inside Safe operation will occur, and those factors include the availability of a service provider, the availability of interim housing. I very much welcome the opportunity if you have some suggestions in terms of other indicators that we should be looking at as we continue to refine these reports. Welcome that feedback.
Yeah, my initial feedback is I would not aggregate the repopulation deployments separate from an inside safe operation. It's essentially the same. You know, you're still going back out there clearing. It's the same location. But I'd like it all just in chronological order, because it'll give you a real assessment of where all the resources are getting deployed. And I think, unfortunately, what it shows, based on the previous report that we received, what it does reflect is that disproportionately certain areas, certain council districts, are getting, an excessive amount comparatively to the areas with larger concentrations of unhoused. And clearly, when individuals from those council districts are having interim housing, individuals being placed in the interim housing shelters in, say, of CD14. CD14, it's clearly a sign to me that says CD14 has some vacancies that can address the needs of the populations in the immediate area, that I think it would behoove, if we're talking about equity, and if we're talking about making sure that these are everyone's taxpayer dollars, we don't get to pick favorites, we don't get to pick winners and losers. We're here to pick and ensure that everyone is equitably getting this. Because I know even when I was repeatedly advocating for an inside safe operation, and I kept getting told, well, you don't have space, and yet I then discover that an inside safe operation occurred and people were placed in the space in my district. Clearly I had space. So I think it would be important going forward to have just integrity in this process, that you better align the placements with, for those council districts, particularly because if I look at, Mr. De Leon, who has done a remarkable job in standing up a lot of new interim sites, including tiny home villages, including a whole host of facilities, it would really be, I'm sure, a welcomed, effort to see some support in that area with these resources. And now, given that, the mayor publicly indicated that just, the room rates of what has been negotiated thus far is too expensive. This is not the sustainable way for us to go forward. What is, aside from the Mayfair and these 500 tiny homes that were part of that $33 million grant, what is the plan to essentially kind of either negotiate better terms that align with the alliance agreement, that are to help get us closer to compliance, or to demobilize some of these locations for a more permanent or longer-term solution that qualifies for the alliance settlement?
Yes, thank you for the question, and then I will also ask the CAO to talk about the current conversations and discussion that is occurring with regard to bed rates across the city and the county. There was a report that was issued in December that speaks to the average bed rate being about $115 a night. And so there are active conversations that are being had across the system to determine whether or not we would be able to increase bed rates. But to your question with regard to how are we continuing to ensure that interim housing units are cost-effective and all, to the extent that we can, also meeting the goals of the Alliance. One example that you've just mentioned, the Mayfair, 294 units, permanent interim housing. These units will be counting towards the LA Alliance goals because they will be in place through June of 2027, and they count towards the 12,915 goal. And so we will continue to pursue opportunities to be able to acquire. We also know that we're in a very tough environment, and so working closely with our housing partners, that's part of the strategy. But beyond that, I will say that we are also renegotiating, to the extent possible, some of the booking and occupancy agreements, and will continue to expand and diversify the interim housing typology. I think you're aware that the city received about $33 million from the state to be able to create 500 beds under the tiny homes model. So again, we're continuing to pursue a diverse set of housing typology to ensure that we're cost effective, that we're building interim housing opportunities across the city, and that we're also doing everything possible to meet the goals of the Alliance, because in doing so, as you know, Councilwoman, we'll be able to recoup or recover the service costs from the county for those units.
Correct. So then it's safe to say at this juncture, we've got roughly 794 units, but that's obviously far short of the total that we need right now. So we still, beyond that, we don't have anything, anything close or projected to be locked in that would be qualifying for the Alliance case.
We have 294 under Mayfair, and we
And the
have 500
500
units that will be coming under the tiny home model.
Yeah, so the 794. But we
Yes.
need to get that's what I said. But beyond that,
Right.
we're kind of, and I just say this because again, we have to meet that obligation, and so because again, we're paying more than we would otherwise have to, because then the county would be providing for those services, and it's kind of like it's part of the expenses that we're incurring that would be covered if we just made sure that we complied. And so it's just, why we're paying for services that the county should otherwise be obligated to provide, but they're getting off scot-free, and our taxpayers are paying, they're paying double. They're paying the county for what the county should be, providing, and then we're using their dollars and, not paving streets, not doing anything, because we're covering services that the county would otherwise should be providing. So I think it's really important that we really start to see some meat on the bones on a real plan to essentially decommission these sites or demobilize these sites, because this was part of the hard lesson that we learned with Project Roomkey, for example, is that we need a more sustainable way that brings us into compliance so that we can actually get the county to pay their share. So I think that's, for me, that would be one of the, that's the number one priority right now that because this financially is unsustainable, as the mayor, acknowledged in her State of the City. So I just want to make sure that that there's actively a plan getting put in place for that.
Councilwoman, I would just say that there is a plan, and I do think it is important that we continue to look at all of our homelessness programs, because as we're also well aware, next year, many of the interim housing units that are under roadmap will expire, and so completely agree with you. The plan that we have put forward is a plan that's consistent with the mayor's budget request that was adopted by the council, and look forward to continuing to look for ways to maximize and ensure that we're leveraging all interim housing options. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll follow up, but I'll go to Mr. Osnowski next. I'll come back.
Thank you. I just have two quick questions, but want to first thank the CAO and Mayor's Office for this really thorough report. I appreciate it. My team has spent a lot of time on it. We really appreciate it. Two questions, one around master leasing and one around the RV strategies and updates. So there was a May 31st transmittal from the CAO which outlined that there's upwards of $16.2 million in HAP funding that can be utilized for master leasing. And I think master leasing maybe gets at some of the challenges that Council Member Rodriguez mentioned. I'm hoping that we can do some of that in my district and bring down bed costs per night. I'm really curious to know what steps the city's taken to formalize its participation in the LAHSA County master leasing program, which is, I think, the route that we've chosen to go down rather than standing up our own master leasing program. And when we can expect to see city dollars being used to bring these buildings under master leasing, particularly in the Fifth, where we don't have nearly enough beds.
Ed Gibson, CAO's office. So in the report that we released with the last Alliance update mentioned master leasing. It was to bring that report forward so we could have this exact conversation, so it has not met it in committee yet. And so we identified a set amount of dollars that were available from HAP to help pay for the operating costs / TLS associated with that. So I think once that report gets to committee, we'll be able to have a more full conversation and actually have LASA present. But to further elaborate, it would be, the recommendation would be to join the LASA strategy and work together. There are funds available with the LASA strategy, with some healthcare dollars, which help cover certain types of gaps when you're doing master leasing that makes the whole thing work. So together we're stronger, divided it doesn't work as well. So we need to be working together inside that detail. The report basically also comes back and says, let us identify give us the authority, let us go identify a transaction and bring it back. Because in multiple conversations, when we talk about it theoretically, you know, you get all these variables, but once we have something in front of us, everybody can say exactly what the issues are, what the challenges are, and how we go forward. And so that report was designed to make us bring back that report, give you what we're looking at, what we're talking about, and bring you back one, and then move forward from there so we could exercise and move on this option.
Okay,
The
great.
report
And I'll
hasn't
just
made it.
end by saying I think that the website that's being stood up that will allow people to make proposals to the city in one place will be really helpful in helping us identify potential master leasing sites, and I'm looking forward to that. I unfortunately have to get on a Zoom, and so I'm not going to be able to ask about RVs right now, but I'll follow up.
Okay, very good.
Thank you very much.
Okay. You talked about integrating ultimately Inside Safe with all of the other programs, so we have one unified city program, and which I think is our goal down the road. Could you talk a little bit about that in terms of TLS and how we move forward with that, and you know, and the RV program that's listed in here as well, and how we're going to ultimately get there.
Yes, so the proposal for Q1 includes funding of just over $3.8 million to provide housing navigation services for Inside Safe participants, and also time-limited subsidies for Inside Safe participants. This is a really important priority for Inside Safe as we continue to focus on connections to permanent housing. And with regard to the RV strategy, to Councilwoman Yaroslavsky's question and your question, Chair, we are looking to expand RV storage capacity. As you all know, we currently have an RV dismantling contract that is citywide, and we are looking at an RV storage facility that would allow us to be able to, again, make this available citywide for any inoperable RV or RVs. And this is a partnership with Metro. Our Deputy Mayor for Housing, Kevin Keller, is helping to lead that effort. If you have further questions or details, certainly would be open to following up.
No, that's great. In fact, I think what I'll do is add a little instruction just along those lines to this amendment to instruct the CAO and the LAPD to enable city entities to access the vehicle recycling program at OPG and Metro sites. Just to make it clear. Second, it's been seconded. And then down the road, we can talk about the TLS and how we can make sure that that's also integrated, and I know we talked about that, maybe doing a report in the future on that. So, then some specific things. The LA Grant operations, when are they expected to ramp down, and the Mayfair, what's the status in terms of that?
Yeah, the LA Grant is expected to close by July the 31st. We're on schedule to meet that deadline. We're about 30% in terms of the number of individuals that are living there. think we've reported in the past, the strategy in terms of demobilization has been approximately 300 residents have moved to the Mayfair. We opened the Mayfair on May 1st of this year, moving approximately 10 residents per day or per week? Per day. 10 residents per day over the course of the last 6 weeks or so. And very pleased with the progress that we're making.
Great. Colleagues, Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes. So obviously, we're going through great expense for these contracted room nights, and when you take what it amounts to on a monthly basis, it's more than what working people are paying often for their own rent. So given the great expense of what's being expended for retaining these rooms, how are you tracking real-time vacancies?
We have a dedicated team, Councilwoman, that is in constant daily communication with all 40 plus or minus owners that are participating in Inside Safe. There's a list that is generated on a daily basis in terms of rooms that are available. This is how, going back to the question that you asked earlier in terms of how we prioritize encampment sites, this is a key component of Inside Safe, ensuring that we have interim housing units available.
But again, so if there are vacancies, for example, in my district, and I've got, for example, because I've got regular outreach happening, particularly on the RV to home effort, encampment efforts, what is the willingness? I mean, this is all city money, so why not allow for the placement? If you have a vacancy, if you let us know that in real time in Council District 7 in the motel that you're leasing, that you've got a vacancy, I could immediately move people off the street. Why would my community, or in other circumstances based on that matrix, why would they have to wait?
I certainly look forward to following up with you on the needs of your specific district, but the two factors that are really critical as we move people inside is the availability of the interim housing unit and the availability of the service provider, because we want to ensure the success of that participant as they move in, ensuring that they are receiving the level of case management service and access to benefits and just overall the level of support that is required as you're moving from being on the streets.
But
so
but I'm confused. If there's a vacancy, if you have an exit and there's a vacancy, so let's say you're in the North Hills Motel, you already have a service provider, and now you're you've got a room, you've got space, you've already got a service provider because you originally contracted for a service provider to provide that case management for, say, 40, I think it was 42 rooms. So if now all of a sudden you've got 5 vacancies, why would you suggest that there isn't case management available? If I've already got outreach occurring, actively occurring, and you've got 5 vacancies, why can't I instantly be notified so that we can move 5 people indoors immediately? Because you've already got the contracted room rate, you've already got the availability because of the vacancy, and you've already got a case manager because it's already been contracted for that facility.
So a service provider enters into a contract with LASA, and so we talked earlier about the payment system that's in place and the cost reimbursement system that is in place. This is something that we can certainly look at, but when a service provider engages, they are engaging for the number of people that we anticipate will need a case management services. So it requires several more steps, Councilwoman, and I'd be open to following up with you on this matter.
Okay, but just so that I understand, when you're contracting a service provider for case management, you're doing it for based on the available rooms that you have at a location, at a contracted motel, for example, correct? You have one service provider?
We currently have 9 service providers that are participating in the program.
Right, but like, for example, if the service provider is LA Family Housing, for example, if you're giving one contract to LA Family Housing to be the case management assigned to this motel in North Hills, correct? Just as, I don't know who the contract is, but I'm just asking. You're not giving multiple service providers to do case management based on the rooms. You're doing it by facility, correct?
I would need to talk to LAHD to review the contract, but my understanding is that it's more complicated than that, Councilwoman. And if CAO has additional information.
Traditionally, Kendra Leal with the CAO. Traditionally, the budgets have been set up by an operation by operation basis and not based on the hotel. And so as the operations were coming online, the service providers were provided a budget based on anticipated occupants to be served. And sometimes hotels did not have the capacity to house all of the occupants at one location, and so they were split. I think the mayor's office is looking into changing that budgeting in order to possibly do it by hotel basis, but currently it's how it's been done up to this point. It's been on an operation by operation basis.
Okay, so then based on that, then so basically you're assigning service providers to people to follow them wherever their placement is, so you could potentially, so you're basically telling me, because that's a huge departure from what the practice has been generally with every other manner that we've managed, any type of interim housing. Normally you say, for example, a bridge home, LA Family Housing, you're the service provider. You've got, everybody in that roof you're gonna manage. If I say, well, Hope of the Valley, you got 3 people here, and then you've got 3 people in North Hollywood, and we're giving you a contract in South LA, that doesn't seem to engender economies of scale, particularly if you're, again, geographically, it's all over the place. So that's a huge departure from historically the way we've done this work. And I feel like it doesn't appear very, it doesn't seem to be efficient at all, because then are you, so if someone, there's obviously been over, 600 exits. So if Hope of the Valley was assigned and 5 of those people were assigned to Hope of the Valley, and now they're out of the system, so Hope of the Valley has new capacity. I don't understand how that works. That seems very messy and complicated to try and fund and track and actually support people. It actually delays the ability to kind of in real time start moving folks out, moving folks into these interim facilities. And my question is, how, once those vacancies happen, are you then, if Judy Smith was assigned to Hope of the Valley, and now you find out in real time that Judy Smith is now no longer in that facility, are you now redacting what the cost is for Hope of the Valley to provide case management for that individual? Like in real time? You follow my question? Because you're paying $110 roughly for service providers per room, per night, which is, again, another $3,000 roughly. We're talking about every placement that Inside Safe has done has cost $7,000 a person for a combination of services and shelter. So if you're telling me that the service providers are attached to the individual placements, it just doesn't make, it's a huge departure from how we've been doing, how historically we've been funding these things. And again, going back to this issue, you guys, it makes sense to me now why LASA and all the payments are so messy and that you can't verify it, if that's in fact the way that it works.
So fair question, but I just want to clarify and remind the committee, we're not talking about interim housing facilities, we're talking about motels and hotels. The majority of the motels and hotels are under booking agreements, and I think the mayor's office has indicated a number of occasions that they're interested in moving to more permanent interim housing as the resource of choice for the program, which certainly this office would support. But I think it's in the nature of, in a booking agreement, you don't have control of the whole facility, the whole hotel.
Of course not, but you're assigning but you wouldn't assign a service provider per individual. You would say, hey, I'm standing up 40 rooms at this location. I have a booking agreement for 40 rooms in North Hills, and I'm just going to assign LA Family Housing to it to do the case management and everything else. I mean, it's no wonder it would be so inefficient that you're, sending people around the city to case manage, 3 here, 2 here, depending on where they're placed, and then if they exit, so now that service provider has two more spots. You follow? It's a huge departure from anything that we've ever done before. And so I would say that that's something that needs to be recalibrated absolutely quickly, because I would guarantee that perhaps is part of your billing issues and why we're not getting real-time understanding of what the vacancies are, or validating what the service providers are getting. That's $3,000 a month per person. So if someone departs, how are you tracking it with that service provider, with that caseworker? In addition to the vacancy that is already created that we're paying for that room night.
We certainly agree from a validation perspective that it is preferable to have control of the entire building and to be able to track it that way. That's absolutely true. It is more preferable if we're able to secure long-term agreements so that we can count on that availability for multiple years, and that's the direction that we're certainly recommending that we go.
Is the service provider required to tell us that there's a vacancy, or is the facility letting you know there's a vacancy?
It's both, Councilwoman. So we're working very closely with service providers to ensure that every participant has an assessment, that there's also a level of information that is entered into the HMIS system, that there's a level of case management and service connection, and we also have a relationship, a business relationship with these owners, and so we are doing both. We are working with the interim housing sites, which, as Matt mentioned, are hotels and motels, with the exception of Mayfair, which is a permanent interim housing unit, and we also work closely with service providers. Thank you.
Great, and I want to keep us moving. We're certainly going to, these are important issues that we'll, in the Homelessness Committee, I'm sure we'll get into in a much deeper way. I'd like to move, Mr. McCosker.
Great questions. Thank you very much. Can we count, I appreciate the level of detail. Can we count on this level of detail in each subsequent report? Same level?
This is the new standard.
This is the standard?
This is the standard.
Great, thank you.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to recommend that we approve the CAO's recommendation along with the amendment that I mentioned earlier. And let's call the roll.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Councilmember Harris Dawson, absent. Councilmember McCosker.
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Aye.
Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Yes.
4 ayes, and this item is approved as amended.
Great, thank you. What's the next item?
That does clear our open session items, so our next item would be 29 in closed session.
All right, let's prepare the room for closed session.